So great, we have a wonderful afternoon ahead, and we are going to focus on some of the new technologies and treatments that we have for NETs. And so we are going to kick off the afternoon with a session on nuclear medicine imaging and treatment. We will have two talks in that session, one on the Gallium-68 DOTATATE PET CT, and the second on PRRT. So I would love to invite up Dr. Andrei Iagaru. He is a Stanford nuclear medicine physician, and we at Stanford have had the Gallium scan available for a couple of years through a clinical trial, but it was really through Andrei who helped pioneer that at Stanford, and we're really thrilled that that's now more widely available. So I'll invite Andrei up.
Thank you, Pam, and the other organizers for having me here, and I apologize for being here only for this talk. There's a conflict with another event that I have to attend all day today, but it is with great pleasure that I'm here, and I want to thank you first for being here on a weekend. I hope that you enjoy being on the Stanford campus and meeting other patients and hopefully learning things that will be useful for you. So, Pam asked me to talk about this new test. It's no longer new, I would say, even in the United States. And I have 20 minutes to tell you what you may want to know about it. So let's not lose track here of that. So let's see if this works. Okay, so first let's start with why. Why would you want to have this test? First, let's understand a little bit what each of those things that are named Gallium-68 DOTATATE, what do they mean? So I think this is a very nice concept. Some people describe it as lock and key, but it's really how you target what you want to image. So you have the radionuclide, so that's the radioactive material that emits a form of radioactivity that our machines are being able to detect. That has to be linked to some people in our field are calling detectives. So you inject these chemicals inside a patient body and they home in on a particular target. You need to be able to put those things together, and that's the linker or the chelator. So that's the DOTA in majority of these peptides. So you have the radiopharmaceutical, the radioactive material, in this case is gallium-68, but there are others. There's fluorine-18, copper-64, etc. In this case is gallium-68. You have the DOTA, which links it to the peptide, the TATE, octreotate in this case, and this TATE then homes in on the target, which in the case of neuroendocrine tumors is these somatostatin receptors that are overexpressed in some of these neuroendocrine tumors. And the first product that came to market officially was Octreoscan, that has been around for a few decades now. In that case, radioactive material was indium-111, linked through DTPA, that's the chemical formula that links it to octreotide and targeting the somatostatin receptors. And that was done with a type of technology called SPECT-CT. Now for PET-CT, positron emission tomography, you have the gallium-68, that's the radioactive material, DOTA, the chelator, the linker, and then your detective is in this case octreotate. I don't think that we need to spend more time other than looking at this picture to understand why one would want to have a peptide scan, a peptide PET, and not the Octreoscan. This is the same patient on the left and on the right, a few weeks apart. And this patient, based on the Octreoscan, would have had radiation to that area of, let's see if this will point, in the head, that blob of activity. But we did the DOTATATE, and that shows much more extensive disease. So in this case, it was changed from radiation therapy to chemotherapy and other types of treatments. It's not always the case like this. It's up to 30% reported in the literature that you have such dramatic changes between Octreoscan and the DOTA peptide scan. But I don't think you need to say more than this image as to why one test is better than the other. For you as patients, it's definitely better as far as convenience. With Octreoscan, you have to return at 24 hours, 48 hours, sometimes at 72 hours. The DOTA peptide scan is completed 90 minutes after injection. That includes imaging time. So you don't have to come back at 24, 48, 72 hours. It's a much more convenient test for you to have. This didn't happen overnight, and I put here one of the first reports published in The Lancet, which is a major journal in the area of medicine in 1989. There was the group that at that point included people from, like Dr. Krenning from Erasmus in the Netherlands, as well as from Sandoz, the pharmaceutical company that's based in Switzerland. And they were really the people who brought this to patients for the first time in the late 80s. And where we are now, almost 30 years later, is that we already have sufficient data from even the newer technology that we can now make statements saying that this actually changes how patients with neuroendocrine tumors are managed. So it didn't happen overnight, almost 30 years of developments, that I think we do have something now that is making your lives better and is helping your treating physicians make informed decision as to what the next best step is in order for you to be treated. I'm not a chemist, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but there are different types of peptides, and they all have that DOTA, the chelator. The one that is FDA approved in the US and available to more and more sites commercially is the one at the bottom highlighted in red, DOTATATE. So how do you get this done? How many people in the room had a DOTATATE scan? Wonderful. And how many had it in the last couple of years? How many had it prior to that? Okay. All right, so that's exactly what I predicted the answer would be. We only started using this in the United States within the last 5 years, not for lack of trying, but for all of the difficulties and regulatory hurdles. At Stanford, we started using it in 2013 as part of an extended access protocol. And because of support that we received from places like Carcinoid Cancer Foundation, Stanford Hospital, we're able to offer this regardless of what type of insurance one will have or not, without charging anything to the patients other than if they had a co-insurance or co-pay that was mandated by their insurance. Tom and his colleagues at UCSF started afterwards with the DOTA-Talk program. They still continue with it. If you are to do it outside of a commercial pharmacy program, you need a little bit of equipment, so it's not something that you can just decide to do overnight. And we're happy at our institution that the hospital and our department provided the funds to get this started. These are just all the things that go into making a dose. But now you have this product that's FDA approved since June of last year. And as I said, more and more places in the United States have access to it. Hopefully, the entire population of United States who is affected by this disease will have access to this compound. And it's really great that the company Advanced Accelerator Applications brought it to market, because it was an issue of how can you bring this to market, phase 3 trial for something with a patent that expired, etc. So a lot of complications, and it's really proves that actually the industry is very supportive of your community and thought about something that can be done to make your experience with this disease better. As far as, okay, now you have the scan done, how is it done? You come to a radiology or nuclear medicine clinic, and after you register and the technology brings you to an injection area, you receive this material through a vein, and then you hopefully are in a quiet and restful place for the next 45 minutes waiting for these detectives to find their targets in the body. And then the first thing that gets done, once you're placed in the machine, we obtain a CT to tell us anatomically where things are located, and then the PET part gets done. Some places, and I think this is the case at UCSF, will give everyone another chemical intravenously, contrast material, to make things brighter so that they can be seen better as to how they look like, as opposed to just how they function. We do that as well at Stanford, but only when the treating physicians are ordering such a scan. Sometimes we also give you something to drink prior to getting in the scanner. That way we can differentiate better what is bowel, what is gut, etc., what's going on inside your body. This is how a scan looks like. We look at images in a variety of ways, but I wanted to show you that some things that you see if you have access to these images, and most places will give you access to the images. At Stanford, our reports are released 7 days after you have the scan automatically, or by the treating physician as soon as he or she has had a chance to review the report. But there are things that are normal and you see, so you shouldn't be scared if you see something on this scan. They're normal things that we see, and those are highlighted on this particular slide. Like everything that you give someone, it has to get out of the body one way. The most common ways to be eliminated is by kidneys in the urine, and that's what you see in the bladder. Ultimately, that's why I encourage people to drink liquids after the scan and go to the restroom, eliminate what's not bound in the body, clear it up through the urine. The other way with anything that's given to a patient is through the liver. Liver is this organ that clears up things that shouldn't be in your body, and it does the same thing with this chemical as well. There are different patterns of disease. Some people have disease that's mostly located in the liver, and this is this example here. It can start, in this case, in the pancreas, and that's what the arrows are pointing to in the center of the image. And it can spread to other organs. We're able to identify what those organs are, and that information is providing your treating physicians, be they medical oncologists, radiation oncologists, or surgeons, accurate information as to how to target these sites of disease and try to eliminate it. Other patients have lesions located in other parts of the body. In this particular case, on the top, it's in the lungs. There you have that, in this case, that detective homed in on this particular lesion, or in the bones. And again, by having this information, your treating physicians are able to direct you to the most appropriate type of treatment. Another important thing, and things can get a little bit confusing depending on what chemical we inject. You can look at one biological process or another. On the left, we have a scan that is obtained after we inject sugar, glucose, labeled with fluorine 18. That's a radioactive material. It's known as FDG, and it is the workhorse for nuclear medicine clinics worldwide. And the idea there is that the cancers, the more aggressive they are, the higher needs of energy they have. And how do they get that energy? They get it by consuming sugar, sort of like, that's why we had some sugar outside for all of us to have energy for the afternoon. Similarly, cancers try to use as much glucose as possible, and they concentrate it. If they're aggressive, they concentrate this sugar, and we're able to take pictures and see where did it go. Now, this is the same patient on the right, but in that case is after we administer the DOTA peptide. And there, the idea is that cancers that are closer in how they function to the actual normal tissue that they originated from, they will have higher uptake of this particular detective, the DOTA peptide. So your treating physician is able to find out information: is a cancer more aggressive, is a cancer less aggressive, and the treatment can be dictated by how aggressive or not a particular type of tumor is. So here we have some lesions that do not take up the sugar, they take up the peptide, and vice versa. So I wish human body was as simple, although simple is a misnomer when you talk about physics or mathematics, to put a formula and solve the equation. But biology is a little bit more complicated, and we still have a lot to learn about how these processes function. So the more tools we have in our armamentarium, the better decisions will be made for how your care is provided by your treating physician. So it's important sometimes, not always, but sometimes your treating physicians will order both scans, and they each provide important information in certain cases for how your treatment will be done. We also have access to new technology both at UCSF and at Stanford, combining the PET and the MRI in one single examination. It's not that every patient will need to have a scan done using a PET MRI machine. It's an expensive tool. We use it more and more for patients whose disease is located particularly in the liver, because there is where the MR is exceptionally good. It's an option that, as I said, both institutions have access to and can potentially be used for your care. And now probably the most important piece is, where do you get this done? This is courtesy of Josh. Josh is doing a wonderful job keeping tabs of what people are doing worldwide. It is not the most up-to-date version because he just released an update this week, and I submitted the slides prior to knowing that he updated the map. But you can pretty much go to the website, prrtinfo.org. You put your location, and you will have information popping out and telling you which is the closest place next to where you are that is able to provide this kind of service. Also, the company producing and distributing this was very nice and gave me the information to show you here. These are sites in blue that will open up soon, and in red, commercial pharmacies that are able to distribute this locally. And you will see a high concentration along the northeast, Midwest to a certain extent, and then on the West Coast as well, you have access to these things. So, as I said earlier, we're very happy that in Bay Area, for at least 3 years, access was provided to this technology, both at Stanford as well as at UCSF. But now, if you are in the Kaiser system, Kaiser hospitals are providing this. I know Kaiser Santa Clara is able to provide this. I believe Kaiser Walnut Creek is able to provide this. The VA hospital in Palo Alto has access to this now. I believe UC Davis will also have access in the next probably 4 to 6 weeks. This has started as small research activities supported by hospitals that had, the best patient interest in mind, but now are commercially available to a large proportion of the patient population. So tremendous success in this arena, and really a great thing for the entire community. And I don't want to steal Tom's thunder, but I wanted to just provide a transition to the next talk, which is going to be about therapy. And it uses actually a very similar concept. You have the same detective homing in on disease, that peptide, octreottate, the same linker, DOTA, and in this case, lutetium-177 is a radioactive material. It's a different type of radioactive material. The one that we use for imaging is not doing harm to you. You always weigh the risk and benefits. In that particular case, the risk of having a PET scan is much less than the benefits that you have out of it. And in fact, each scan is probably less than 10% as what we as medical professionals are allowed to receive every year. So the risk compared to benefits is really in favor of having the scan done. This type of radiation used here is much more powerful, and if this detective is homing in on the disease, this radioactive material will be able to kill a large proportion of those cells. So it's the same concept of having a chemical that targets only specific cells inside your body, but then the radioactive material will help kill those cells while doing minimal damage to the normal tissues around those cells that have disease. This is a product. Now, it underwent a phase 3 trial, and the results of the trial are truly exceptional. It's the same company as the one providing the Gallium-68 DOTATATE. You see graphs like the one in the middle with the differences between people who received the radioactive material versus people who receive the non-radioactive treatment, and you rarely see such separations in terms of outcomes for patients. So this is clearly an indication that this drug works. As I said, it's under review at the FDA. There is an expanded access program where the company provides this drug at no charge, and every other expense is billed to insurance. Both Stanford and UCSF are part of this expanded access program. So again, it's a lot of goodwill on everyone's part to provide what's best for you as patients. And with that, I thank you for listening to me. If you want more information, those are the websites for Stanford and UCSF, nuclear medicine. You have a lot of information there as well as how to contact us. Thank you very much.